Let's start the second session now. In the second session, we'll be focusing primarily on the preparation for the shamatha practice in Sutra Mahamudra. We'll begin in this session with meditation. The shamatha practice of observing thoughts is one of the main shamatha practices in Mahamudra. Following that, we'll give a short review of some of the earlier points from the previous session. Then we'll look at these preparatory practices. We'll do a meditation going through these preparatory practices for the beginning of each session. Then after the meditation, we'll begin to look at what qualities are we cultivating in this shamatha practice. And then question answer at the end of the session as per normal. The practice we're going to do now is the shamatha practice, and just jumping ahead a little bit in the text says, now attentively focus mindfulness on the mind's nature of awareness and clarity and observe it single-pointedly and nakedly. When observing in this way, whatever thoughts arise, simply recognize each one. So we are to observe the mind's nature of awareness and clarity. This is the conventional nature of the mind. So we're just focusing mindfulness on the mind itself and observe it single-pointedly and nakedly. Nakedly means observe directly with bare attention. And when we're observing the mind in this way, just observing the mind directly, then it says, whatever thoughts arise, simply recognize each one. Here, when we see the word thoughts, this is a translation of Sanskrit and Tibetan term, Sanskrit term vikalpa, and the Tibetan term namtok. And these terms are generic terms, which literally mean conceptual activity. So when it says whatever thoughts arise, it doesn't just mean thinking, it means any conceptual activity. So here, the word thought is including not just thinking, but emotions, memories, mental images. These are all thoughts. That's all conceptual activity. So whatever of the mental activity arises, observe it, recognize it, without following it, without trying to get rid of it. So in this practice here, we're not focusing on sense objects. So we're not focusing on sensations in the body or sounds or so forth, just mental events. And again, simply recognize them. So when they come up, just observe them without getting caught up, without trying to get rid of them. And as we mentioned earlier, for this practice, and we'll talk more about this shortly in terms of preparation, it's very much recommended to have the eyes at least partially open, resting your gaze in the space in front of you. So just let your gaze be vacant. So just keep the eyes relaxed, blink as often as you need. We're not looking at anything. We're just resting the gaze in the space in front of us. A lot of advantages for doing this. Those advantages we'll explain shortly in the text. They come up. So let's do that practice now. Find a nice, comfortable posture. Let's begin. We begin, as always, by preparing the body, establishing a good posture. The two main things with posture is to keep the back nice and straight, and at the same time allow the entire body to become completely relaxed. And having established a good posture, then keeping the body as still as possible, avoiding any unnecessary movement. And allowing the breathing to settle into its natural rhythm. and then preparing the mind, setting it into a state of ease and relaxation. Simply allowing it to come to rest in the stillness of the present moment. Allowing the mind to remain relaxed, still, and clear. Now allow your eyes to be at least partially open, resting your gaze in the space in front of you, keeping the eyes soft and relaxed. Blink as often as you need. And now bring your attention to your own mind and observe your own mind. And observe any thoughts that arise in the mind. Thoughts here also includes emotions, memories, mental images. So simply observe any mental activity that is arising in the mind. Without following thoughts, without trying to get rid of thoughts. If you're new to this practice and you're not sure where to focus, then every now and again, deliberately generate a thought. Any thought will do. And simply watch that thought as it arises in your mind, and then watch it as it disappears back into the mind. And then keep your attention right where it was and see what comes up next in that space. Now, if you find that you've got caught up in a thought and got carried away, then the first thing to do is relax. Then release grasping onto that thought and very gently return to observing the mind. And so relax, release, and return each time you get caught up and swept away by a thought. Keep coming back to the mind again and again. If you're finding that you're constantly getting caught up and swept away by your thoughts and emotions and so on, then you might like to experiment with labeling or naming. That is, give a name to the mental event, but the mental event itself, not the contents. So simply labeling things like thought, anger, image, memory. Just give a name to the mental event without the contents, naming the contents. And in this way, you may find you have some more space from the mental event. So you might like to experiment with that, naming or labeling. And we can bring the meditation to a close. Let's start with a short review. And so within the actual explanation of this Mahamudra text, we've covered the preliminaries. We've had a brief look at Tantra Mahamudra yesterday. And today now we're moving into looking at Sutra Mahamudra. And within that, today and tomorrow, looking at the shamatha practice. And so what we've seen here so far is that Sutra Mahamudra is about the ways to meditate on emptiness, the emptiness that is being presented by the Buddha in the Perfection of Wisdom teachings. And that we are following the presentation of emptiness as described by Nagarjuna in his Mula Madhyamika Karika text, which is a commentary on the Perfection of Wisdom teachings. And that the Madhyamika philosophical system that comes out of this, based on this view of emptiness, is saying that there's no path to liberation other than this. We must come to realize emptiness if we want to be liberated from all mental afflictions and suffering. And we saw there that within this practice, the Vipassana practice of emptiness, many different systems of practice here from various Kagyu lineages, various Indian Mahasiddhas, from the Dzogchen tradition, from Geluk, from Sakya, and they all have their own name and they all look a bit different. But the Panchen Lama is saying that when we look at them very closely, someone who's really learned in definitive meaning scriptures, skilled in logical reasoning, and experienced in meditation, they see that they all come down to the same intended meaning. And that is, they're all leading us to come to realize the ultimate nature of the mind, to come to realize the mind is empty of inherent existence, to come to realize, in fact, all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. And then within the Sutra Mahamudra, there are two approaches to doing this Sutra Mahamudra practice. There's either first shamatha, then vipassana, i.e., seeking the correct view after having meditated, or we could even go for vipassana first, and then on that basis gain single-pointed concentration in shamatha. So that's the first method. But here we're following the second approach, first shamatha and then vipassana. And so now we're looking at shamatha practice, and within shamatha we've got these two outlines in the text, preparation and actual practice. And we saw there that in the preparation talked about two things, the 6 prerequisites and the 6 preparatory practices. The 6 prerequisites are things that we need to do to prepare ourselves for shamatha practice in general, how to establish a suitable basis for engaging in shamatha practice. And then the 6 preparatory practices are 6 things we do at the beginning of each meditation session. So we started looking at the 6 prerequisites in the last session. So let's continue that now. And in the 6 prerequisites, what we looked at in the last session was the first of the 6 prerequisites, supportive environment, that we need to find a supportive environment if we're going to do shamatha practice, particularly if we're going to do it in some extensive retreat format. And we saw the necessary things there for a supportive environment. One key element there is have good friends, supportive friends, the idea of sangha, which I'll talk more about later in this retreat. But to introduce this topic, I'll read a little bit from the shamatha book from Alan Wallace called Attention Revolution, excellent book on shamatha practice. And he talks about these 6 prerequisites. And on page 50 in his book, he says the following. When I lead shamatha seminars, I like to think of them as expeditions rather than retreats. The word retreat has a connotation not only of withdrawal, but also of defeat. And that certainly isn't the spirit of such practice. The word expedition, on the other hand, suggests adventure, conquest, and exploration. The Latin roots of the word have to do with extricating yourself, literally stepping out of some situation in which you've gotten stuck. In the practice of shamatha, we discover how deeply our minds are trapped in the twin ruts of excitation and laxity. In the Buddhist tradition, a mind trapped in these ruts is said to be dysfunctional. And in order to make it serviceable, it is helpful to step out of our normal activities, seek out a spacious sense of solitude, and explore the frontiers of the mind. This expedition doesn't require blind faith or allegiance to any religious creed or metaphysical belief system. Over the past 3 millennia, contemplatives from various Asian cultures with diverse belief systems have followed the path of shamatha to its culmination, and they have reported their findings. We don't need to accept their claims simply on their own authority, but if we're inspired by earlier accounts of the benefits of this practice, we may venture forth on this path to see for ourselves whether we can achieve the results of the contemplative explorers who have preceded us. There are great adventures ahead, but also perils and dead ends. Sometimes the path is clear, but now and then it may seem to disappear altogether. The purpose of relying on those who know this path from their own experience is to save time. 6 prerequisites for sustained, rigorous training are set forth in many Indian and Tibetan Buddhist meditation manuals. These are some of the essential causes and conditions that will produce the fruit of shamatha. So let's have a look at these 6 prerequisites. The first, which we've already covered, is what's called the outer condition. So the outer conditions, the environment. And then the other 5 are to do more with inner conditions. So let's have a look at those. The second and third sort of come together, and they are having few desires and being content. And having few desires, it's with respect to wealth, material possessions, and so forth. And that is with respect to things we don't have. Whereas being content is with respect to what we do have. And here it's talking about material wealth and possessions. That if we don't have these 2 prerequisites, we think we don't have enough money, enough possessions, good enough house, car, and so forth, holidays and so forth, then we're going to spend all of our time and energy pursuing that, generating more money, buying more things, getting more stuff. Our mind will be completely absorbed in that, obsessed with that, and we won't be able to then engage in any sort of meditative practice, let alone any sort of more intensive shamatha retreat. And then also the 4th one is few activities, meaning we need to simplify our life. Now, the reality is that many of us in the modern world have very busy, hectic lives. We don't have enough time for everything we do. And often I hear people say, oh, I'd like to meditate, but I'm just too busy. I don't have time. That's never a valid excuse. Now, it is true that many of us are very busy in our modern world, and some of the things we do are essential. Most of us need to work at some level to have enough money, to have roof over our head and food in our stomach and so forth. Some of us have got family responsibilities. Some of us have some other essential responsibilities. But above and beyond those essential responsibilities, essential activities, we tend to fill up our day with lots of stuff. And we tend to do it for one of 2 reasons. One is that in our modern world, it's often said that if you're not doing something, you're not being productive. So just do something. And so we just busy ourselves in this illusion of trying to be productive. But also, if we're not doing anything, we're just sitting quietly, that really forces us to look at the state of our mind, which is often a bit of a mess. And so we try to just busy ourselves to distract ourselves so we don't have to look at the state of our mind. Now, to simplify our life, we could start to forcibly cut things out of our life, but that's going to be always a struggle. Rather, a more effective approach to simplify our life is engage in those common preliminary practices, particularly the first 2, is reflect on precious human life and death, to understand that we've got this precious opportunity to make our life meaningful and it's not going to last forever. And if we really internalize these reflections, I think what you're going to find is that all of these things that we fill up our day with that don't really bring us anything, we're just simply going to lose interest in them because we're not going to want to waste our life engaging in those meaningless activities. And then suddenly we'll have time and space and energy to devote to meditation and more meaningful activities. The fifth one is ethical discipline. And so this, I think, is the foundation of any meaningful lifestyle, and certainly the basis of all Buddhist traditions is ethics. And in the attention revolution here, Alan Wallace not only talks about social ethics, avoiding harming others, he also talks about the importance of environmental ethics, looking after the environment, but also psychophysical ethics, that is, looking after our body and mind, because we need a healthy body and mind as a support for all of our practices. And then the sixth prerequisite is letting go of compulsive thinking. Now, many of us have some obsessive compulsive thinking about certain things. And often a lot of our obsessive compulsive thinking is with regard to things out there that seem to be the source of our happiness. How can I really get those things that seem to make me happy? Or how can I avoid those things out there that seem to be giving me a lot of problems and suffering? So we have a lot of obsessive compulsive thinking about those things. And so to help start to let go of that, again, common preliminaries, particularly the fourth one, to really cultivate that view of genuine happiness, to understand the source of happiness and suffering is not anywhere out there. And then we can start to really let go a lot of that obsessive compulsive thinking that is based on that false view that the source of happiness and suffering is in fact out there. And then here, Tsongkhapa in his Lam Rim text, he talks about these six prerequisites and he says, the most important ones are good ethical discipline, again, the foundation of all Buddhist traditions, foundation of all meaningful lifestyle, seeing desires as disadvantageous, and dwelling in an appropriate area. So developing an appropriate area, having a good supportive environment, including good friends to help us. And then seeing desires as disadvantageous, again, view of genuine happiness. So for the second and third one, having few desires and being content, what's going to be very helpful there again is the common preliminary of view of genuine happiness. Because as long as we believe that all that stuff out there is going to make me happy, then we're going to have lots of desires. We're never going to be content. If we can really practice and internalize that fourth preliminary, the view of genuine happiness, to come to see that all those things we've been chasing after out there are never going to satisfy us, we'll then let go of all that desires for accumulating more and more stuff, and we'll be content with whatever is sufficient to have a comfortable lifestyle. And so what we can see in these six prerequisites is the importance of the common preliminaries. So those common preliminaries are going to be almost essential for us to be able to implement these six prerequisites, which again form a very good basis for effectively engaging in shamatha practice. So that's the six prerequisites. So that's how to set up our life in such a way to support this practice. Now, let's have a look at the preparatory practices. What are we to do at the beginning of each meditation session? And here the Panchen Lama said that there's definitely necessary to do these six preparatory practices. And those of you who've studied some Lam Rim probably know these six preparatory practices quite well. They've been very well presented there in Tsongkhapa's Lam Rim text. And so let's go through them. The first two, the preparatory practices are coming from this paragraph from Panchen Lama, but the first two sort of precede the paragraph. And the first one is to clean the place. And that is to make sure that we have a nice, comfortable, clean place to meditate. Because if it's cluttered and messy, that will really have not a very good effect on our mind. So make it comfortable, clean, inviting place to meditate. Ideally, setting aside a room at home as a meditation room. If not, set aside a corner of the room as a meditation place. Keep it clean and tidy and comfortable and inviting for meditation. And then the second thing is make offerings. And so here we find in Indian and Tibetan tradition the concept of having in front of where we meditate a small altar and placing a number of things on that altar. And what we find in the Tibetan tradition is that in terms of our body, speech, mind, we symbolize that, the enlightened body, speech, and mind, we symbolize that with a text, which is the enlightened speech, a statue, which is the enlightened body, and a stupa, enlightened mind. So we have those three symbolizing the result that we are striving for, that to achieve that enlightened state, to transform our current body, speech, and mind into that enlightened body, speech, and mind. So that is for that purpose. And then often also on the altar, we have these offerings that are set out. We have a set of 7 or 8 offerings that come from the Indian tradition, based on if someone important guest came to your house. In ancient India, you would offer these things to them. First, you would offer some water for them to wash their hands and feet, some water for drinking, some flowers to make it beautiful, some incense to make the room smell nice, offering some light, some perfume to anoint their body, giving them some food, offering them some food and some nice music to listen to. And so in Tibetan tradition, we often have that symbolized using water bowls. And so we're filling up water bowls and we're making this offering. And we make this offering to help us to cultivate generosity, which is the first of the 6 perfections, the 6 main practices in the Mahayana tradition. So this is really helping us to cultivate this generosity, which is also going to have a very positive effect on our mind when we go into the meditation as well. So they're the first 2. Then the third one is very much covered in this verse here we see in the text from Panchen Lama, where he says, on a seat comfortable for concentration, assume the 7-fold bodily posture. So that is in terms of preparing the body, setting up a good posture. And then next he says, and clear out any impure breath with the 9-round breathing exercise. So this is preparing the speech, and we'll talk more about that shortly. And then it says, having refined the awareness, then begin with a virtuous, pure mind by going for refuge and generating bodhicitta. So this is preparing the mind at the beginning of the meditation session. So let's have a look at each one of those in more detail. So preparing the body. So again, on a seat, comfortable for concentration, assume the 7-fold bodily posture. So the 7-fold bodily posture is to these 7 things that we've already looked at, what to do with the hands, legs, back, shoulder, head, eyes, and jaw. And the 2 key elements there with that 7-fold posture is keep the back straight and the body relaxed. And the general recommendation, as we saw earlier, was to have the eyes at least slightly open, letting some light in, because if we have them closed, then we may fall into dullness and drowsiness. Here for Mahamudra practice in shamatha, it's very much recommended to have the eyes open, either partially or even naturally open. And often the instruction given here is let your gaze be vacant. That is simply resting your gaze in the space in front of you. Now, the advantages for having the eyes open, either just partially or naturally here, is, again, it helps avoid laxity or dullness. Because if we have them closed, very easy to sink into dullness or drowsiness. With eyes open, letting some light in, that can help avoid that. But also, with the eyes closed, it's very easy to drift off into the past and the future. With the eyes open, even though we're not really looking at anything, the visual gaze is still somewhat engaged. And the visual gaze only happens in the present moment. So by having the eyes open, that actually helps to lock us more into the present moment. So that's very good for shamatha. Also, with the eyes closed, we have this strong sense that there's a me in here and a world out there, this sense of a subject-object duality, and that the mind is some little thing inside of our head, and then there's a world out there independent of us. Whereas if we have the eyes open, that starts to break down that false sense of duality, which is actually what we're trying to realize in Vipassana practice of emptiness, that there is no subject-object duality. So if we're already starting to break that down here in shamatha, that's going to be helpful later when we go into Vipassana practice to realize non-duality, to realize emptiness. But also here, if we've only meditated with our eyes closed and developed the ability to observe thoughts and emotions, then it's going to be difficult to bring that into daily life, because we want to also be able to observe our thoughts and emotions and so forth in daily life without getting caught up in them. But if we've only ever meditated with eyes closed doing that, We don't, and in daily life, we generally have our eyes open. We don't have then the habit of observing thoughts and emotions with eyes open. So it'll be much harder to bring this into daily life, to integrate it into daily life. Whereas we've already developed the ability in meditation to observe thoughts and emotions with eyes open, much easier to then bring that into daily life. So for these reasons, to have the eyes open. Now, when we have the eyes open, we're not trying to hold them open. We're not trying to deliberately, so blink as often as you need. And we're not trying to deliberately unfocus the gaze. Otherwise, that's straining the eyes. So just resting your gaze in the space in front of you, keeping the eyes soft and relaxed. And that's the posture. And then in terms of preparing the speech, we see here this, it says, clear out any impure breath with the 9-round breathing exercise. And here the breath and the mind are like the rider on the horse. So when it's talking about impure breath, what it's really talking about here is the impure or the negative agitated states of mind that are riding on the wind energy, the breath. And so here, this 9-round breathing exercise, certainly at our sutra level of practice, is really mainly about letting go of negative states of mind. Because the next step in preparing the mind is we set positive motivation. We go for refuge, generate bodhicitta. But if we've come into meditation with an agitated negative state of mind, then it's very difficult to go from that to the positive mind of bodhicitta. Very difficult. So this step here is about bringing the mind into a neutral state. That's what it means really to clear out any impure breath. Now, this 9-round breathing exercise we can do at a number of levels, depending on whether we're here operating at sutra level or later at the tantra level. If we're operating in the tantra level, this 9-round breathing exercise comes together with a lot of visualizing of channels, visualizing central channel, 2 side channels, imagining the breath going down one, up the other, and so forth. But here at this introductory sutra level, we want to just keep it simple, because this is simply a breathing exercise to be able to let go of that negative agitated state of mind and let the mind come into a neutral state, again, simply by focusing on a breathing exercise. Previously, we did the breathing exercise of simply focusing on 3 deep breaths. Here in Tibetan tradition, the 9-round breathing exercise is very helpful, because also then it prepares us for tantra practice, where we can do this 9-round breathing exercise at a much deeper level, where we're really then affecting the subtle energies in our body. And to do this 9-round breathing exercise, we first breathe in through the right nostril. So you can, if you want, block the left nostril. So you can just block the left nostril, breathe in through the right nostril, and then block the right nostril and breathe out through the left. So do that 3 times, in through the right, out through the left, in through the right, out through the left. Then swap over, breathing in through the left, out through the right 3 times, and then breathing in and out through both nostrils 3 times. I mean, if you don't want to block, you can just imagine doing that as well, but you may find it even more helpful to be fully present or engaged in this breathing exercise by blocking, and that will also maybe help us to let go of any negative agitated states of mind. So we'll do this 9-round breathing exercise as part of the preparation in the next meditation that we're going to do shortly. So that's part of the preparing the speech. And then preparing the mind, we saw, was going for refuge and bodhicitta. We'll go back to that here. So preparing mind, going for refuge and bodhicitta. So having refined the awareness means that refine the awareness through this breathing exercise. Then we begin with a virtuous, pure mind by going for refuge and generating bodhicitta. So that's preparing the mind. And then we continue. Then it says, cultivate the profound path of Guru Yoga. And then after making hundreds of very strong fervent requests, dissolve the Guru into yourself. And so here in these 6 preparatory practices, now we've completed the first 3, cleaning the place, making offerings on the altar, and then preparing body, speech, mind, up to generating bodhicitta. The fourth step then is to visualize the merit field. The merit field is, if we're doing it very elaborately, it can be not only our guru, but all the lineage masters, lots of deities and Buddhas and so forth. Or if we want to be very simple, just the guru, just our guru, our teacher, visualized in front of us. Because then, on that basis of visualizing this merit field, we're going to go through this 7-limb prayer, which again was for accumulating merit and purification. So we're doing this with respect to what we visualize in front of ourselves, this 7-limb prayer, which we'll look at shortly. And then after having done that, then we request blessings, which is here, make fervent requests, and then dissolve the guru into yourself. And so what we're going to do then is this meditation. We won't clean the place. I'll assume you've got a clean place, and we'll leave out the offerings, but we'll go through the meditation now of the last 4 of the 6 preparatory practices. That is preparing body, speech, and mind in terms of the posture, the speech in terms of the 9-round breathing exercise, bringing the mind to neutral state, preparing the mind. And we'll go through these prayers for meditation that one of the handouts. And so the Panchen Lama is saying that we begin with a virtuous pure mind by going for refuge, generating bodhicitta. But we saw earlier then, to help us to do that sincerely, we precede that with the 4 thoughts. So we'll add that in terms of the preparing the mind. And then also very common to go through these 4 immeasurable practices, because also this is very much a foundation for bodhicitta. So we see these first 3 verses here are part of the preparing the mind. Then visualize the merit field. And for this, we'll keep it simple. So if you have a teacher or guru that you'll follow in your spiritual practice, you visualize them in front of you. If you don't have a personal teacher, then you can just visualize any teacher, spiritual teacher, that you have a lot of respect and admiration for, perhaps someone like the Dalai Lama or someone like that, or maybe one of the historical figures like Lama Tsongkhapa or Padmasambhava or something like that. Or you can even do the historical Buddha, or one of the other Buddha figures like Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion, or Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom. So just pick someone, either current or historical, that you have a lot of admiration and respect for, and visualize them in front of you. And then we'll go through this 7-limb prayer, and we'll go through this requesting these blessings through this 5 lines request there. And then, as Panchen Lama said at the end of that, allow then the guru to dissolve into yourself. And then that is the end of the preparatory phase. And having gone through this state of generating a positive state of mind, doing this accumulation and purification and requesting blessings and dissolving the guru into ourselves, then our mind should be in an optimal state for the actual shamatha practice. So that will be positive, uplifted, radiant, focused. And so this preparation will help us to be in an optimal state for engaging in the main shamatha practice. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to go through this meditation, going through these preparatory practices. Again, starting with the body, the posture, the speech. We'll do the 9-round breathing exercise. And then once we've done that exercise, just let the breathing flow naturally. And actually for this shamatha practice, observing the mind, and the one we'll do tomorrow, resting in awareness, you don't have to breathe through the nose. If you prefer, you can breathe through the mouth. That's fine. And then preparing the mind, it will go again through these stages of the 4 thoughts, the refuge bodhicitta, the 4 immeasurables. Visualize the guru in front of ourselves. I'll go through this 7-limb prayer, requesting blessings, and then we'll dissolve the guru into ourselves. And then if we go ahead in the text a little bit, then it says, without wavering, settle in meditative equipoise within that state for a short while. Meaning meditative equipoise means a balanced, clear mind. So just rest in that state of mind for a short time without wavering, which means without getting caught up in any other thoughts and so forth. And so once we've done this preparation, just for a few minutes, then we'll just rest in that state, that balanced, clear, uplifted, positive state of mind for a short while. Let's do that practice now. Find a nice, comfortable posture. Let's begin. We begin our preparation by preparing the body, assuming this sevenfold bodily posture. And within that, the two most important things is to keep the back nice and straight. And then at the same time, allow the entire body to become completely relaxed, completely at ease. And using the out breath to relax and release any tightness or tension in any part of the body. And softening and relaxing all the muscles in the face. Mouth and jaw, soft and relaxed. All the muscles around the eyes, soft and relaxed. And in this way, allowing the entire body to become completely relaxed, completely at ease. And then having established a good posture, to keep the body as still as possible, avoiding any unnecessary movement. And then as part of preparing the speech, particularly to help let go of any negative, agitated states of mind, we can engage in this 9-round breathing exercise. And so we can begin by first blocking our left nostril and breathing in through the right nostril, and then blocking the right nostril and breathing out through the left nostril. And we can do that 3 times. And then we can reverse it, blocking the right nostril and breathing in through the left, and then blocking the left and breathing out through the right. And again, 3 times. And then we can simply breathe in and out through both nostrils 3 times. And having completed the 9-round breathing exercise, then simply allow the breathing to settle into its natural rhythm. And this will further settle the mind. Simply allowing the breath to flow naturally and effortlessly. And then preparing the mind. And here the Panchen Lama says we are to begin with a virtuous, pure mind by going for refuge and generating bodhicitta. And so we'll do this, but we'll precede this with the 4 thoughts. So reflecting on these 4 thoughts. This precious life of leisure and opportunity is rare and easily lost. The world and those within it are impermanent. I too will die soon. The results of my virtuous and non-virtuous actions will without fail ripen within me. And there is no genuine happiness to be found within the abodes of samsara. And so I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And by my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And by my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And by my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And to help cultivate bodhicitta, we can reflect on the 4 immeasurables. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is without suffering. And may they abide in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion to those near and far. And then we follow this with the profound path of Guru Yoga. And so visualize your guru in the space in front of you. And if you don't have a teacher, just someone who you have a lot of admiration and respect for in the spiritual path. And then we can do this 7-limb prayer towards that person in front of us, or the Buddha that's in front of us. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of samsara and turn the wheel of Dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate all the virtues of myself and others to the great enlightenment. And then we can make some requests to the Guru in front of us. Please bless me to cease all deluded minds immediately, from disrespect for the Gurus to the subtle dualistic conception. Bless me to generate all unmistaken minds instantly, from respect for the Gurus to the realization of emptiness. And please bless me to completely pacify all outer and inner obstacles. And then imagine the Guru rises up, comes above your crown of your head, transforms into white light, and dissolves into you inseparably. And then just rest in that state for a short time. And then we can bring the meditation to a close. One more short topic before we go to question answer. And so that completes the preparatory part of the shamatha practice, preparation. So now we're into the actual practice in the text. And here, the Panchen Lama says, the concentration to be accomplished here is a concentration possessing two aspects: vivid clarity and a non-discursive single-pointedness. So we find this in the meditation text on shamatha, that to develop single-pointed concentration, we have two qualities we're cultivating. One is we want to have a stable mind, to be able to focus single-pointedly without becoming distracted. But also, we want to be able to focus in a very clear way, to have vivid clarity, to help overcome laxity or dullness. So these are the two qualities we are cultivating here in this practice: stability and clarity. But here in the slide, you see that we've added a third quality, the quality of relaxation, a quality that's not often mentioned in these sorts of shamatha texts historically. And I think the reason is that historically, people tended to be quite relaxed. So it didn't really need to be emphasized. In fact, often people were too relaxed. And so we often find in these texts that we are to, one of the initial instructions, and it's a little bit like that coming up shortly in the text. The text often says something like, for shamatha practice, firmly tighten your focus on the object. And when we read that, we go, yep, I can do that. And we clamp down hard on the object, because that's what we do in daily life. If we want to focus on something, we tighten our focus, because if we don't tighten the focus, we get easily distracted. And unfortunately, that sort of works a bit. If we tighten our focus, we can, for a short time, often focus better, but it comes at a great cost. And we know this well from our own experience. If we focus on any object or task for a longer period of time with this tight focus, with a lot of tension, we become completely exhausted, and often we become very agitated. So this is not a sustainable method of focus. And so therefore, we first need to learn how to relax, to overcome this tension. And this is, I think, one of the main reasons many people have so much problems in meditation when they start, is they're simply too tight, too tense, they're trying too hard. That doesn't work. We just get more agitated, more frustrated, more distracted. And even to the point where sometimes people complain about getting headaches from meditating. We're way too tight, way too tense. So the first thing we need to do is we need to learn to relax, 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 to really overcome that tension, to relax the body, relax the mind, because it's only on the basis of a relaxed body and mind that we're going to be able to cultivate any sustainable stability and clarity of attention. And so here, coming from Attention Revolution, again from Alan Wallace, he says, the relationship amongst these three qualities can be likened to the roots, trunk, and foliage of a tree. As your practice grows, the roots of relaxation go deeper, the trunk of stability gets stronger, and the foliage of vividness reaches higher. Meaning that if we want an effective shamatha practice, first we need to sink deep roots of relaxation. If we don't sink those deep roots of relaxation, then our tree of shamatha will keep falling over, keep collapsing. The stronger the roots of relaxation, the stronger the trunk of stability can grow. The stronger the trunk of stability, the higher the branches and leaves of clarity can reach. So we are to emphasize these three qualities in this order. First, emphasizing relaxation, then stability of attention, and then eventually clarity of attention. I'll talk a little bit more about that again later in this retreat, because this is a very important point. But that's enough for now. Let's leave it there. We have some time for question and answer now. So have we got any questions?
We have just one question now, just about the presentations, if they're public, if we can get just the slides.
Slides, yes. I'm giving all the PDF copy of all the slides to Dharma friends, and I think they'll be putting it up on their website for getting access to, together with the audio. So yeah, no problems about that.
Okay, that's all we have for now.
That's all. Okay. If any questions, we've got 10 minutes before the break, so plenty of time for any questions if anyone has. while we're waiting for questions, just a couple of comments. Again, back on that relaxation, I really can't overemphasize this point enough from my own experience and talking to many, many people, that we have this sort of attitude in the modern world that to get somewhere, we need to push. We need to push hard to get somewhere. And so we think that in meditation, if we want to achieve some goals, we need to push hard. And so we sit down and we push hard in meditation, and that will not work. I mean, we're just going to get exhausted. We're going to get very agitated. And also, if we are in a retreat setting, let's say we're doing a longer meditation retreat, maybe some weeks or months, and we push hard, then we're going to completely unbalance all these subtle energies in our body, which already are quite out of balance, but we're going to unbalance them a lot more. And remember, the subtle energies and the mind are like the rider on the horse. So by pushing hard and unbalancing these subtle energies, we're unbalancing the mind. And so we can get what in Tibetan Buddhism is called a condition called lung. Lung means wind. It means, but here when we say we get lung, it means we've got completely imbalanced energies in our body. And that presents itself often also with a lot of agitation in the mind, a lot of anxiety, a lot of tension in the chest and so forth. So we don't really want to go down that path by pushing hard in meditation. So rather really emphasizing this relaxation. Relax, 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 relax. The more you're relaxed, the easier it is to meditate, the easier it will be to cultivate stability and clarity of attention here in shamatha practice.
Okay, so we have two questions.
Sure.
First from Dror. In the last meditation, should we also keep the gaze open? I found it hard to visualize a guru with the eyes open.
Yeah. We don't have to have the eyes open from the very beginning. So if you find that doing the preparatory things like the breathing exercise or the visualizing the guru and all of these refuge bodhicitta and so forth, you can do those with the eyes closed. So you can then, just once you get to the end, just as you're about to begin the meditation, then you can open the eyes at that point if you find that works better. So that's fine. You don't have to have them open at the beginning. It's just for the actual main practice, for the shamatha practice, very much recommended to have the eyes open. So your choice, whether you have them open from the beginning or after you've gone through the preparatory stage.
Thank you. Another question from Tom. Can you elaborate on the term field of merit?
Field of merit. The field of merit, so again, we saw that in the preliminaries for Tantra. It said that, I think Panchen Lama said something like, in order to realize the ultimate nature of the mind, we need to purify and accumulate. So purification is purifying negativities through the four opponent powers, using Vajrasattva practice or other practices, just to purify the mind. And the other one was to accumulate. And that is in terms of accumulating merit and wisdom. And merit is just the result of virtue. So to accumulate merit and wisdom, to accumulate wisdom, we do that remember in the Tantra practice, we did that through the mandala offering. And the accumulating wisdom there is by visualizing this whole mandala coming out of emptiness. So this whole offering is coming from emptiness. That's the wisdom. And then offering the whole mandala, the whole universe, in this pure form to the guru is then virtuous, and that is merit. Merit is what we get from doing that virtuous activity. And so similarly here, then when we do this 7-limb prayer, which is sort of the sutra equivalent of the Vajrasattva mandala offering, the field of merit is the field with which we do this activity, these virtuous activities for gaining merit towards. So that's why we just did the very simple one of having the guru there. But the field of merit, if we want to be very expansive, extensive, it would often involve a central figure who may be your guru or historical figure like Lama Tsongkhapa or Padmasambhava, and then all the sorts of lineage lamas and masters from different lineages, and then various deities, various Buddha figures. So it can be a very elaborate field with which we do this activity towards. We are making this offering towards, where we're confessing negative actions towards, we're rejoicing and so forth. So that's the field of merit.
Thank you. We have some more questions.
Sure.
Does the 9 breathful need to think about clearing the speech at the same time?
Clearing the speech.
During the yeah.
So so that 9-round breathing exercise is really something that's fully done in Tantra. And there we're really doing it at a much subtler level. We're really visualizing various channels and wind energies moving. So we are operating that 9-round breathing exercise in the level of Tantra at a much more subtle level than we're doing here. Here at this level of practice, we're using that 9-round breathing exercise in a similar way to taking 3 deep breaths, is that simply by occupying ourselves, focusing on a breathing exercise, that can help us to let go of any negative, agitated states of mind that we may have come into the meditation with. So that's the purpose of the 9-round breathing exercise here, is to really help bring the mind into a neutral state by doing this breathing exercise. That's all.
Okay, thank you. A question from Chaya.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the colors of the 3 channels in the 9 breathing meditation.
I didn't mention them though, but again, we can add color to it if we want, in terms of red and blue and white and so forth. And then again, they are at a deeper level. When we go into Tantra, they're often ones representing, they're representing the 3 types of mental afflictions, like the ignorance in the central, and then left and right is attachment and anger. And we visualize them using different colors as well. So we can do that. But again, that is then really starting to move into a deeper level. So we can do this 9-round breathing exercise at many levels. And so I just wanted to keep it very simple here for this basic sort of base level. But then once we get familiar with this 9-round breathing exercise, then we can add more to it and make it more in depth and go much deeper with the 9-round breathing exercise, including visualizing certain colors for the 2 side channels and so forth. But here at this level, we don't even really need to visualize any sort of channels, because channels is really Tantra. And so if we're not practicing Tantra, then probably best not to start visualizing channels and so forth. But if we're doing this 9-round breathing exercise in the context of, say, sadhana practice or tantric practice, then yes, it could be appropriate there to visualize these 3 channels, the central, left and right, and visualize mental afflictions going out and so forth and so on. So it really depends at what level we're doing the practice, how elaborate we get with this 9-round breathing exercise.
Thank you.
Any more questions, or we'll have a break there?
No, that was the last question.
Okay, well, it's perfect, bang on time. It's time for a break. Let's take a break. And in the 3rd and last session now, we'll start to look at some faults in the shamatha practice and how to overcome the faults in shamatha practice. And we'll go a bit further in the shamatha practice, observing the mind, observing thoughts and so forth. We'll do a couple of meditations on that in this next session as well. But let's take a break now and come back in 30 minutes.